there, Heather Steves here, and today I wanted to share with you a quick little process video of me making this little Christmas village. So I started with these cones and I am wrapping them with the blanket wool. This is actually from something that Vicki Boutin had done with some wreaths that we did a couple of winters ago, I believe it was, and I thought I wanted to try it with a cone and see if I could actually make it into a Christmas tree. So you take this blanket wool and you just start wrapping it around. I actually had green cone you saw there, and then I also had white cones. So for future note, the wool really sticks to the green cone, which is kind of good and kind of not. And the white styrofoam cones, it actually slides around. So I used my hot glue and I glued it, but then as you wrap it around, sometimes you need to shift it around to make it tighter. So you saw that I went once all the way around, and then I'm kind of going back and forth here, and I'm adding some looser ones, so that gives it some dimension and some texture. So you can see that it's kind of messy look. I don't know, but it just makes it more interesting. And then I got this little board from the dollar store, and it's kind of the perfect size for the 3 trees. And I also picked up these little tiny lights from Michael's. They were on clearance, so it's actually a string of beads with the little LEDs in them, so it kind of looks like the beads would light up, that they're the lights, but they don't. The lights are kind of in between, so there's not as many lights as there are beads, for sure. So I was just kind of playing with it to see what it was going to look like, and then what I have to do is I actually have to put a hole in the bottom of right through the wood, and so that I can feed this through. So now that my trees are done, I'm just trying to decide what kind of paper to put on the base to make it look really good. I didn't want to paint it, so I wanted to find a paper. The wood grain I thought would work, as it worked with the wreaths when we were doing those, but it just didn't look right. So instead, I actually found that the white glitter paper looked really nice. It has a great sparkle to it, and it really looks like just fresh snow. So that makes for a really good base for a village. So I just cut it to the right size, and I'm attaching it to the board. I'm using my liquid glass because it's a really good strong adhesive, and I don't want this to be starting to peel up. So I've attached that on there, and then I'm trying to decide what I should use for the edges. I looked at the paper, and then I actually pulled out some shimmer trim that I have that matches really well, but I didn't really like that, and so I just thought I'm just going to leave it for now, and I will decide later. So now I'm taking some of Vicki Boutin's foundation paper, and I'm applying some of her silver glaze to it. So I'm just spreading it out with my palette knife. I don't want it too thick, but I do want a little bit of texture in it. And then I'm going to use that for my house. So when Vicki was creating the wreath, she actually used Tim Holtz metal dies to cut out the houses, but I didn't have those, and I decided I have a lot of Cricut cuts, so I found them in Cricut, and I just kind of made my own. I played with the size and the shape of them to get what I wanted, and then you saw me there pull up my iPad. I was just checking to make sure that I had enough silver covered on the paper so that I could cut out some houses. So this next one is a little bit different. I couldn't remember exactly what I had used when I made the wreath one before, but I thought, whatever, I'll just experiment with it. So I pulled out my transparent texture paste, and then I had some glitter in my stash. So one is a gold glitter, and the other one is like a clear, I don't know, iridescent glitter, I guess you would say. And I just added those and mixed them up, and it created a really kind of interesting look. So it's kind of gold but kind of clear, and so same thing, I'm just spreading that out onto the foundations paper. It does make it really thick, so you don't want to have it too thick on your paper, and so I spread it out as best I could, and then some of the glitter was kind of not as even, so I was trying to even it out and make it look as nice as possible. So now I've cut out a few of the houses already. So I've got one out of craft cardstock. I've got one out of just white foundations paper. And then this one that I'm inking here is actually from a DCWV burlap paper pad. So it's just like a creamy burlap color. And I'm just inking it with the Vintage Photo Distress Oxide, just to give it a little bit of, I don't know, texture, because it's pretty plain when it's white. And then now I'm adding my tape so that I can attach it all together. So I did find that the score tape worked the best, because I did use some wet glue before when I was doing them the last time, and it took a really long time for it to kind of grab. So at least with the score tape, it's instant. So you might notice as I'm finishing off with the top of this that it's not a very nicely finished edge. The tab is over the top, but that really isn't important because I'm actually going to put on a separate piece for the roof. So next I'm going to work on this plain white foundations paper one, and I'm looking for a stamp to put some texture onto it, and I found this old Heidi Swap script stamp, so I'm going to just stamp some little different areas of that onto there, and I'm using the black ink. So it gives it just a little bit of a texture on there. Then I'm taking Vicki Boutin's gold glaze, and I'm going to add a little bit of water to that, and then I'm going to splatter it on there. I'm using my brush, I'm just making some little bigger kind of blobs. And then as I go, I'm just kind of adding more and more to it. And rather than inking the edges of this house with the Vintage Photo, I'm actually going to use that gold glaze and kind of highlight those edges and corners, just to give it some interest and define those edges better. So next I'm going to work on this one that I've cut out of craft cardstock, and the idea is to kind of make it look a little bit like gingerbread. So I found this little background stamp, and it's going to add some pattern to it. So I'm taking my embossing ink and I'm going to use that, but I don't want it to be like a solid chunk of the background. So what I did was I actually pulled out this embossing pen that I have. So it's a product from close to my heart. I'm sure there's others. And I'm just kind of drawing onto the stamp with that embossing ink. And then that will give me more of a kind of random background there. And then I've just stamped that one a little bit just to add a bit more up top, adding my white embossing powder to this because I do want it to stand out and look like the icing on a gingerbread. And then I'm just taking my brush and cleaning up a couple of spots that might have grabbed some unintentionally, and then I am just heat embossing it. So now I'm just folding everything up here, and you can see that I'm actually cutting off the top because when I made these in my Cricut design space, I stretched and adjusted the shapes, and so it made the tops a little bit too long, and since I'm covering the tops up with the roof, it doesn't really matter. So I am just going to ink the edges of this one as well with the Vintage Photo, and I'm actually putting quite a bit on here. I want it to look kind of like the baked gingerbread. The edges are a little bit more brown, and then I'm going to use my score tape and attach it all together. You'll notice that I'm using my bone folder as well once I get these together. A little bit tough on this one because it's so small, but you want to make sure that you get some pressure onto that score tape so that it actually does hold, because a lot of adhesives actually need pressure in order for them to properly work. So I've just gone back and I've grabbed the white foundations house that we prepared just a little bit ago. And because it's foundations paper, it's very heavy. It's 100-pound cardstock. So I've just had to score all the fold lines. So that's what you see me doing there, and then that allows me to fold this one and assemble it. And I decided after all to go ahead and put some of the vintage photo on the edges, just to give it a little bit more definition. Now I went ahead and I added another house with my Cricut into the piece that has the silver glaze on it, but it makes it so thick that I just needed to use my utility knife and just cut that out all the way through. I'm then taking a little stamp that I have from 49 and Market that has a brick pattern on it, and I'm going to add some of that to this house. I'm going to use my black ink for that, and I need to be very careful and make sure that I don't smudge it because the silver glaze makes the ink pretty slick. So one of the fun things about making these little houses is actually stacking them on top of each other and making little two-stories. So I thought that I would do that with this silver one with the canvas. So I'm tracing out the roof line, but by the time I look at it, there's really nothing left of that silver house. So I'm like, that's not going to work. So I'm just kind of playing around here, trying to decide where the houses are going to go on my base and which ones are going to look nice together. And I decide that I just need to cut out a little bit more shapes just so that I can make some decisions on there. So I decided that I'm not going to use the silver glaze house as a second story. So I'm going to go ahead and assemble it. And you can see I'm using a block there, a stamping block, to help bend that because it again, very, very thick. Once I get it all scored, then I'm inking it again with the vintage photo. And then I'm going to use my score tape and start to assemble this little house. So now I'm going to go ahead and cut a house out of this glitter paper that I made. So it's foundation paper, plus it's glitter, plus it's the adhesive to hold the glitter. So it's really super thick. So I really wanted to not get the glitter all over my blade on my Cricut. So I flipped it over. It won't stick because there's just too much going on there. So I used my painter's tape and I taped it down to my mat, and then I was able to run it through the machine and cut it out. And what I've actually cut out is a little church. So the shape and the kind of components of this one is a little bit different. So I've got a steeple there, and then I've got the two sides of the house. So it goes together, same idea, it's just two pieces instead of one. So again, I'm using my block, that nice crisp hard edge, to help fold those edges over, and then I'm going to attach it all together. Well, I must say that this little steeple was very finicky. I was able to get those little pieces bent over on the block, but it was not easy because it's so thick. And it made it quite difficult. They're just very tiny pieces, so the paper almost started to like come apart, but I did manage to get it done. Then I decided I do definitely want this one to be edged with the vintage photo, just to give it a little bit more definition and make it just look much prettier and more rustic. So in the assembly of this one, I actually switched back to my liquid glue. These little tabs are very tiny, so getting the score tape on them just wasn't going to work for me. So I just used the liquid adhesive, and I just had to take a little bit more time just to hold them. It doesn't take too long for them to dry. And it does have a lot of grip, which works better with the glitter anyway. So just to make sure that these two pieces stay together, I just put a little bit of Scotch tape on the inside there. So now I'm going to move on to the roofs of the houses. So I just played around with some of the papers that I have. So I still have some of that silver glaze. I have these great wood grain papers from Close to My Heart. And they have these, they do look like they're boards of wood, but as you can see, they're pretty wide in some areas. So I was able to actually cut that to fit the house. I think it looks really cool, and I'm very happy with how that works. And so I'm just playing around with different colors, different textures for all of the houses, just to see what's going to work best. So again, I am distressing them all with the vintage photo, and then I am making sure that when I put them on, I know which part of my house is going to be the front and which one's going to be the back. I tried to keep the seams at the back, but it just depended on what the houses look like. But what I did find was sometimes they had a bit too much of an overhang. So you don't really want a big overhang at the front, and you really don't need an overhang at the back. So it was a little bit of trial and error on that. And then I just continue to look for the right roof for each little house. So for this little gingerbread style house, I decided to keep with the theme, and I have this fun little embossing folder, and you can see I'm just embossing half of it because my paper fits through the top, and then I can turn it, emboss the other half in the opposite direction, and then it almost looks like little clay tiles, which turned out really cool. And I'm able to actually trim along the emboss line, and I just love how that turned out. It looks so cool when it's done. So I decided on this really cool chevron wood grain paper for the church, and I just love how it actually works out so well by folding it down the middle, and then each direction is different on each side. But I think it looks fantastic, and it really suits the church. So I wasn't happy with how plain this burlap one looked. So I decided I'm just going to stamp on it. So I found this this background stamp, and it's a little bit awkward, but I was actually able to add this so it almost looks like planks of wood to create this little house. It's so cute. So unfortunately, when I came back to assemble everything in its final spot, I forgot to record it. But anyway, here is the final project with everything all together. I have some little red stars that I put on the front of each house. I used the wool to wrap around the front of my board, added some lights there because I had some extra. And I just love how this turned out. I think it looks fantastic, and especially when it's all lit up. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please don't forget to like and share and enjoy. Have a wonderful day. Bye.